Sinatra and Quincy Jones were in here, and Elvis was in here, and the Rolling Stones. I think they did Steel Wheels here. You could pretty much name any popular band from the 60s and 70s. The Mamas and the Papas did California Dreamin' in Studio 3.
What's up, folks? Welcome to episode 60 of the Bass Shed podcast. My name is Ryan Roberts. On the show is Lawrence Ethan. Lawrence Ethan is the chief engineer at the world-famous EastWest Studios in Hollywood, California. He is also a songwriter. We talk about both of those things, his time at EastWest and his thoughts, feelings about the recording industry and the nature of it now, all that stuff. We also talk about his process as a songwriter, and I'll speak more about that in a second, but I definitely want to give ample time to bring attention to his latest single titled Heavy on all the streaming platforms. You can get there by going to thebassshed.com/podcast/Lawrence Ethan. lemurmusic.com. Everything you need for the double bass can be found at lemurmusic.com. Stop by the website. It's the new website. They're still uploading their inventory on the website. Shoot them an email. If you're looking for something specific, go to lemurmusic.com for everything you need for the double bass. TsunamiCables.com, hands down the best cables on the market with a lifetime warranty. Stop by TsunamiCables.com, check out their product line, check out their custom shop cables, and check out the V15 preamp. Now, until December 17th, they are running a 15% off promotion by using the promo code XMAS21. XMAS21, 15% off everything store-wide at Tsunami Cables, including the V15 preamp. Stop by their website and check it out. TrickfishAmps.com. I had been playing their single-channel preamp, the Minnow. I am now playing their dual-channel preamp and AB box, the Trilobite, which I absolutely love. I've been doing a lot of gigs and traveling where I have to do, where I'm playing upright and electric. I have a lot of quick changeovers, and having the Trilobite there, just click on the button, boom, the sound's dialed in. It's got two different gain structures. I'll be talking more about that. I should probably shoot a video or something explaining the Trilobite a little bit more, but I absolutely love it. TrickfishAmps.com. Trickfish is also now manufacturing Mike Pope's FlexCore preamps. So stop by TrickfishAmps.com. Use the promo code TheBassShed for 10% off. All right, as I mentioned, Lawrence Ethan is on the podcast. Lawrence and I talk about his history at EastWest Studios, his history as an engineer. We speak about the recording industry, both historically and where it's at now. We talk a little bit about rock music and where rock music is now. We talk a lot about that, and we spend like the last half of the conversation discussing Lawrence's new single, latest single, titled Heavy. That is on all the streaming platforms, as I mentioned before. I highly recommend checking it out. And I love when people, give some insight to where the song was coming from and where they were at personally, and how the work of art got created and the process they went through to get that out into the world. I really love hearing about the artist process, and Lawrence will speak to that. So here's my talk with a chief engineer at EastWest Studios and singer-songwriter Lawrence Ethan.
How's my audio?
Sounds good, man. You're the audio guy. What mic are you using?
It's a USB camera mic.
Oh, really? Sounds good.
Good.
That's good. What are all these awards I see right here?
Those are for the software stuff.
I was mainly you can't see where I'm pointing. I don't know why I'm pointing, but there's these little clear ones that look important.
Yeah, they're the Key Buy Awards. I don't even know what that is. I'm sitting in the owner's office because it's the only place where I can have some solitude.
Nice.
I can go hat.
Yeah, it's a good looking hat. Is that a Stetson?
No, I can't afford something like that.
Is Stetson a brand or a style?
It's a brand.
Okay.
This is an Outback trading company, Original Oilskin.
Yeah, sounds impressive.
How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. There's as we mentioned, there's quite a we can cover a lot of ground. I'm excited about this. Before we get into all that, you're I know you to be the chief engineer at EastWest Studios. That's where I met you. You also do gear repair. Is that just like a side hustle, or is that a business you're running?
Yeah, well, you could call it a side hustle. I mean, I fix the gear here at EastWest,
Okay.
and then sometimes clients say, "Hey, can you look at my what?" And I'll
Yeah.
say, "Yes, when I get a chance, I will look at it."
Nice. And then on average, how many sessions would you say a week are you engineering?
I really don't engineer much except my own stuff now.
Okay. We're going to get to that too. I want to talk about your artist stuff.
I prefer engineer to technician. I'm really the chief engineer and head of technical operations.
Oh, that's a fancy title.
Yeah, I guess so. I like chief. I like chief engineer because I am an engineer and it makes more sense.
Is that how you got involved with EastWest? Is just as an engineer?
Well, I was here when it was cello.
Okay.
Recording studios. I worked at Sunset Sound. Sunset was the first place that I was on the technical staff. Prior to that, I was a freelance engineer.
Okay.
And I was working at Sunset, and then I got kind of handpicked by cello. They said, "Oh, we need somebody," so I came over here from 2000 to 2003, and then I went over and I was chief at a studio in Florida for a while. And in 2013, 10 years later, I got a phone call from Candace saying, "We need somebody." Here I am.
Nice. Now you're back. So for those listeners that are outside of the LA area, let's talk a little bit about the history of EastWest Studios and cello. I know it as one of the main studios that's still around, and a lot of legendary records, to my knowledge, have been cut there. When did it change from cello to EastWest?
Cello closed down 2005, I think.
Okay.
And the building fell into disrepair. It was in receivership. They were going to auction off all the equipment.
Oh, wow.
Candace Stewart talked her friend Doug Rogers into buying the place so he could record his sample libraries here and so forth. And he set about to revitalize the place cosmetically.
Yeah.
And sunk a lot of money into it. Got a fellow named Philippe Stark to do the remodel.
Mm-hmm.
And he was smart enough to remodel the common areas, the kitchen and the bathrooms and the lounges and stuff, but left the studios alone. And they're still pretty much in the same as they were when it was open in the 60s. We haven't done a lot of changes since it was Ocean Way before that. It started out as Western recorders.
Okay.
And Studio One, for example, was built by Bill Putnam for Frank Sinatra. And Frank Sinatra set up shop here when he left Capitol to set up Reprise Records. And they tried to duplicate, I think it was CBS Studios in Chicago, something like that.
Okay.
And so they built the studios here at United and at Western, which became United Western, the two different buildings.
Sweet. So what are some other legendary records that have come out of that building?
Well, the first one that comes to mind is most of Pet Sounds was done here by the Beach Boys. In my tenure at cello, we did a couple of Tom Petty records, Tom Petty and the Heartbreaker records.
Sure.
We did probably 4 Chili Peppers records, Weezer, Audio Slave.
Okay.
With Chris Cornell singing lead on that. Elvis did his comeback special or part of it here.
Oh, I didn't know that one.
In front of an audience. Annette Funicello recorded here a bunch. because in the beginning they were doing sort of adjunct recordings because it was a radio theater for a while, where they did live radio broadcasts, in the style of like Fibber, McGee and Molly and all that stuff. And they would have a audience in there and people would do live radio broadcasts out of here. And then they built these studios on the side, Studio 3 and Studio 2, to record ads and musical segues and that kind of stuff. And then it kind of morphed into a recording studio. But obviously, I think one of the funniest things is that Frank Sinatra recorded New York, New York here in LA, in Studio 1. And so pretty much everything that you would hear Frank Sinatra in reprise was recorded here.
But was that the studio? I don't even know. I don't remember what studio I was in there. I think Studio 1. Do you remember?
Yeah, that was Studio 1.
That was Studio 1. I didn't know that. I would have. I definitely would have lost it a little bit if I'd known New York had been cut there. While we were tracking there. That's cool. That's cool energy to tap into.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. All the recording spaces, even Sunset Sound, place I worked at, Music Grinder. The second building of Music Grinder was built in the old Arthur Murray Dance Studio, and this building was originally a grocery store. So you can imagine a lot of human beings moving through it then.
Yeah, and
then it was a casino / brothel for a few years.
Okay.
So you have that energy in the walls.
Yeah.
And eventually, the recording studios. So I think that actually makes a difference. And it does make a difference that Sinatra and Quincy Jones were in here and Elvis was in here, and the Rolling Stones, I think they did Steel Wheels here. You could pretty much name any popular band from the 60s and 70s. The Mamas and the Papas did
sure.
California Dreamin' in Studio 3.
A lot of those Laurel Canyon bands go through there.
Yeah, most of them. Yeah, definitely. And there was I can't remember I think it was called Laurel Canyon or something. There was a documentary. And they shot.
Was that the one that? Okay, the one that Jacob Dylan kind of.
Yeah, it was Andy Slater and Jacob Dylan, and
I saw that.
And they got together and they recreated some of the songs that were done here, but they kind of intermixed it with documentary footage of the other folks that had worked in this studio. So it was very much a Laurel Canyon vibe. Yeah,
I didn't know it was cut there. I saw the documentary. I have mixed feelings about the documentary. I love the spotlight on that era and the music that was coming out of Laurel Canyon at that time, and how it was such a movement. And for people that live in Los Angeles, they know that like Laurel Canyon has a feel to it in general. If you go through the canyon or go to that little store that's right there, like halfway through, you can kind of feel a lot of that energy, and the music kind of makes a little more sense once you're feeling that energy. So I liked that about the documentary. I thought Jacob Dylan kind of sucked. He was just, I don't know. I didn't like him. I didn't like him it seemed like he didn't care. Like he just had this apathetic thing. But maybe some people think that about me and this podcast too. So I don't know. They can talk shit all they want. I don't care.
If we're being honest, I thought it was a little there was a little too much of Beck and Jacob Dylan and
okay. Yeah, I can see that.
And their performances and stuff, know, and it was kind of like, look what we can do with this music.
Sure.
Whereas I would have been okay with looking at, footage of the original bands.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally nerd out on that stuff. Like, seeing actual footage of the studios and what sessions were like back then and what the process was, and hearing commentary from dudes that were actually in those sessions and stuff. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the Wrecking Crew documentary.
I did. Yeah,
that was good, and that was a little bit more on point as far as talking to the musicians that were members of the Wrecking Crew. Sure. A ton of that footage is from here.
Okay,
the Wrecking Crew, they're the ones that were working on those Beach Boys records and the Mamas and the Papas records, and pretty much any pop record coming out in the '60s that was done here, the Wrecking Crew was the backing band.
Absolutely.
was an interesting era where all those guys contributed a lot from a songwriting perspective.
Sure.
Writing the bass parts and the guitar parts and making it their own. I find it interesting also that they did really well for themselves, it seems, when I was watching that, back in the day when you were a session guy and you could own a mansion.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, the nature, when I first moved to LA, I was doing rap and hip hop sessions, and I got involved with the dude who had engineered Chronic and Doggy Style. And like, he used to call me for sessions quite regularly. That was 06, and probably about 08, like the whole session thing had just kind of completely shifted. Technology being so accessible, everybody had a home studio and had a friend, and then that just changed the game.
Yeah, everything comes around. I've been doing this for 32 years or something.
Yeah.
And there's been those, oh no, it's the end of the recording studio era. This isn't going to happen anymore. And just when you thought that was the case, the more popular hip hop artists started to have more money to record. And they said, hey, instead of sampling like this guitar riff, why don't we get, Dean Parks in here to play live guitar?
Yeah.
And suddenly they started to appreciate, wow, if you use this vintage microphone through this vintage EQ, it sounds amazing right off the bat, and you don't have to Pro Tools the crap out of it to make it great. And so all of a sudden there was this renewed appreciation for all this vintage gear that we have over here,
Nice.
and the spaces, you can't, as much as you try recording drums in your garage and putting, the emulations of rooms and stuff on them, it doesn't sound like having the band in that room, and you can't replicate that. So thank God these places have remained.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like that people are understanding the importance of that, of, using older gear and having people in the room and doing it, the quote unquote old school way, because there's a synergy that happens that way that can't be duplicated.
Yeah. And we do a lot of big band stuff and orchestral stuff. And again, you can't, you got to cram, 20, 30, 40, 50 people in a room playing at the same time to get that, there's no way to replicate it. And so we got the space for it. Come on down.
Come on now. It's a business card. Cool. I remember we were talking there, like, you were actually, I don't want to misquote you, but you were telling me the nature of the sessions that have been coming through now, which is like not big block out record dates, but more spot things. People coming over for just drum tracks or maybe a vocal thing or something, but they're not doing the blocking out. They're not blocking out the studio to cut a full record. Has that been a shift you've seen just post-pandemic, or was that kind of the nature of it leading into the pandemic also?
Leading into the pandemic, I mean, like you said, with the advent of Pro Tools and being able to do so much at home, and people emulating an artist like Billie Eilish or something. Well, we did this, in our basement in 3 feet of water with, with
an iPhone app. Like
with an iPhone app or a 57 and a PreSonus or whatever. But again, but we want to get real drums on this track, so they'll come here and they'll cut drums or they'll cut guitars or kind of get off on the studio vibe.
Sure.
And there's also things, the intangible things that people certainly like the R&B artists and hip hop artists also appreciate all the accoutrement that come with coming to a studio. In other words, if you want food, you just say, can we get some food? And you get a runner in here and they send out for food. If you're at home, you got to order Domino's. It's not
right.
There's coffee available and there's lounges available and spots to shoot stuff that are attractive.
It's a great looking space.
Yeah. Being in the studio has its own, vibe. And again, you're that intangible feeding off the vibe of Frank Sinatra's spirit and
all that stuff's just kind of in there.
The Stones and all the people that were in here before, even obviously Paul McCartney and the Beatles, we just did Foo Fighters in here. And
oh, cool.
They kind of turned into sort of the modern classical rock band, you know?
I mean, I think a good friend of mine, Laura Mace, is the backup singer in the Foo Fighters. And the last time I saw her was maybe like, I don't know, a year and a half ago. No, because 2020 didn't exist. So maybe 2 years ago.
Right.
We were at this barbecue and I asked her, I'm like, does Dave Grohl understand that he's like the last real rock star? And she's like, oh yeah, he definitely gets it. Like he's the last one kind of connected to, I mean, Nirvana was like the last major rock movement, you know, and he was connected to that and he's still out doing the thing. And in my mind, he's the last major rock star. And I love that he gets it and kind of leans into it, you know?
Yeah, he definitely leans into it. I saw him at the Forum recently and I almost was like, dude, tone it down. Okay. Between every song, he was like, we're going to rock the fuck out of your face. We're going to fucking kill you. We're going to massacre you with rock and roll. Okay, Dave, we get it.
Yeah.
You know, right. But yeah, you know.
Meanwhile, there's people in the audience like, I'm going to spill my Diet Coke. Settle down. We're too old to rock like that, Dave.
Yeah, right. No, it was obviously they put on a great show, and I thought, you know, before I thought about the Foo Fighters, I thought that U2 was kind of the last great arena rock band.
Yeah,
you know, there's that whole discussion about, you know, when I was growing up in the 70s, you had your Led Zeppelin and the Doors and all these people we were listening to. And there was that mystique, you know, that, you know, people would be like, they're into black magic and la, la, la. And you didn't really know the people. And when they showed up on stage, it was this magic experience, you know, even in LA where everybody's jaded and they go to concerts and talk about how it sounded or whatever. But, you know, and then somehow, you know, the cameras got backstage. And what with Instagram and everything, you know, you're in the artist's bathroom,
right? You
know, while they're in, and that whole sort of they've capitalized on you know, pulling the curtain back so much that there is no curtain and there is no mystique and there is no bigger than life rock stars. How can you become that person?
Right,
it's different now.
Absolutely, and have a reality TV show at the same time.
Yeah, you know, it's more like I'm more accessible than any other artist. I'm Billie Eilish and I'm insecure and look at me, you know.
That's the second reference. Was she just in there?
No, I don't know. I don't have a lot of contemporary artists in my repertoire.
I don't have a lot like in the lexicon. Mental queue. I like her stuff though, for what it is.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to admit it. It's just, you know, first of all, like when I was recording rock records in the late 80s, early 90s, all my friends, you know, who were also in their, you know, late teens, early 20s were developing their fandom for bands and stuff they were listening to on the radio. I was just working on that record. I'm doing rap. And I'm doing rap for 3 months. And when I get in the car, I turn the radio off because I've been listening to loud rock music. So I was kind of I was out of touch with what was going on in pop culture. And it's kind of been consistent. You know, I'm familiar with the people that come through here, but, you know, I'm that old guy who, when they're like, oh, you know, Skrillex is coming in. And I'm like, who?
Yeah. All right.
You know, Diplo and Skrillex are going to be in Studio 5. Okay. They both sound like games that I played when I was a kid.
yeah.
And it's embarrassing. Like even the other day, Kendrick Lamar, who is really huge, was in here, and I said, you know, if Kendrick Lamar came up and slapped me on the face and sang me one of his tunes, I still wouldn't know who he was. And it's embarrassing, but it's just because I'm working all the time, I guess.
Yeah. You know? Yeah. No, I mean, similarly, I'm pretty out of touch with what. Like I had friends that worked on that Kendrick record that blew up like maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I had a lot of friends that worked on that record, and it's like I've never heard the record. You know, like I'm glad they got the work. You know, and that's cool. They had some career leverage off of it, but I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, it doesn't mean I don't appreciate it. I tend to like to find things on my own.
Yeah.
You know, if everybody says Titanic is a great movie, I won't go see it. You know,
like purposely a contrarian.
I'm that way. I'm like, well, if everybody likes it, it must really suck.
Yeah,
but you know, I I forgot why, but I stumbled on Post Malone,
Okay.
and I listened to like his first single, and realized after I listened to it, I said, wow, this is a really great song. And it came out in 2006, you know. I think and it's like 2020 or whatever,
Yeah.
and I'm suddenly on this Post Malone kick, and I'm listening to all his stuff. And then we had an artist in here. Uh, Suddenly his name escapes me, and I kind of went down, to listen to his material, and I was like, wow, a lot of this stuff is really good. I guess I had an assumption that modern pop, R&B, hip hop was just kind of what's the word, pap, and
Yeah.
And it turned out a lot of the songs were actually very heartfelt and sonically good and well produced. And so
Sure.
I'm just ignorant. So, I'm glad that I discovered that stuff, but I'm also the last kid on the block, to discover new music and go, oh, wow. I mean, how do you discover music these days?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. And for a while on the podcast, I was always asking guests, like, where are you going to find new music and what are you listening to? Because I feel like it's so saturated. And actually, I just got into vinyl not that long ago. So I'm like going to the vinyl store and actually walking around and thumbing through different things and going genre by genre through the store and looking for records that interest me, because I understand that process. If I get on a streaming service, I don't somehow like, I could type in a name and then there's probably going to be some suggested stuff, but I want to know more about it. If it's a jazz record, I want to know who's playing on the record. I want a little bit more information and context. So lately I've been doing the vinyl thing, and that's
it might have been a Christmas ago or maybe one before that. Like you said, 2020 disappeared.
Yeah.
And my wife bought me a turntable. I returned it and bought myself one that I liked better.
That thought was there. It's the thought that counts, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I wanted one, and it motivated me to get a decent one. And I started listening to my, the records that I had since I was a kid.
Oh, great.
And then, I decided to go to Amoeba and go into the back and buy some, Glenn Campbell record.
Yeah.
And then I, while I was there, I Googled like popular jazz records. And so I bought, Dave Brubeck.
Okay.
And not too long after I got Everybody Digs Bill Evans. And
oh yeah.
It's now my favorite record, and I'll spin that thing to death. It's just so good,
Yeah.
And I think that medium, I think jazz works on that medium better than most types of music.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
It's like you almost have to listen to it on vinyl. And
Yeah.
I remember when I first put up a record on that turntable, I almost wept. Because we can have all these discussions about analog versus digital and yada yada, but there's something about the presence of a recording on vinyl coming into your space that you can't put your finger on what it is, but it was so real. I think I was listening to maybe like Andreas Vollenweider or something like that. I don't know if you're familiar with. He was like,
no, I'm not.
He's like old new agey guy that played harp.
Oh.
And I got into him in my late teens or something like that. Somebody turned me on to it. And so I put this on, and I was just like, oh my God, it's music. I haven't heard music in years. I've been listening to crap coming out of my phone for all out. That's no way to listen to music.
Yeah, it's a completely different experience.
We can talk about the commitment.
Agreed.
To vinyl. You on Spotify, you play the verse and the chorus, and then you move to the next song. On an LP, you put the LP on and you listen to the whole thing. And you have to pay attention because you have to go over and turn it over.
Yeah.
So there's a certain amount. I'm committing myself to just listening to music. This isn't wallpaper. This isn't environmental music. I'm going to listen to a record right now.
Yeah, it's definitely more of an investment. And I like the investment of the selecting process too. Like, I'm going to get in my car, I'm going to go to the record shop, I'm going to spend probably an hour and a half, end up with a stack in my hand. And then as I'm walking towards the counter, select two that I'll probably end up buying. But it's a little bit of a ritual that I enjoy.
If you haven't gone to a record store and gone through the records, and there's also that I like the X factor, the what do you call it, the risk.
Oh yeah, the
You know,
investigative. Like, all right, let's try this.
yeah, well, I'm going to buy this thing and it's going to cost me $14 to $19, and
Yeah,
I hope it doesn't suck. You
yeah, I
know,
know. What's funny as I remember like getting there towards the end of the register and like looking through the stack of records I had. I'm like, do I want to spend $15 on this? And then I thought, like, I've paid 20 just to park. You know, like, why am I being weird about the $15? Like, you know, worst case scenario, it doesn't work out. Most likely I'll find some enjoyment in it somewhere. It intrigued me enough to pick it up.
Yeah, I was a little irked though that I wanted to rebuy some of the Pink Floyd titles that have been played so often that they just sounded like crap, and I was going to get the reissue.
Okay,
and it was like $50, and I was
yeah.
get out of here! Come on.
Yeah, I started looking up some like specific jazz records that I thought would be cool to have on vinyl, and like the reissues of them are astronomical. Like there's some like they're only available for in Tokyo or something, and it's $160. I'm like, I already have the CD. Like I know what's on it. I don't know if I want to commit that much to listen to it that way, but it would also be I'd experience the record in a new way. But is it worth $150? Apparently, the answer was no to that because I did not buy it.
Yeah, well, that's a gouge. I don't know why they do that. It doesn't cost that much, but it is nice to. There's an artist working here right now who is mixing off of analog 2-inch, to analog 1/2-inch. They are bouncing the 1/2-inch into Pro Tools. They're mastering the digital version of the record off of that analog bounce into Pro Tools, but they're mastering the vinyl from the 1/2-inch.
Oh,
and for some reason that I like that, it appeals to me.
What's the nature of this record? Like what stylistically is going on this record?
It's rock.
Okay.
You could say.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to keep that shit under my hat.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not asking for the artist. I just thought it would have to be something more organic with live musicians.
Yeah. And it's weird because, for my day job, it's I'm the only one within 100 miles who knows how to get 2 tape machines locked up with, the SSL automation and all these things that haven't been done since like 1992.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a challenge to get that all happening, but there's something also very exciting about it because there's stuff that happens that, that's random, the part of the appeal of recording in a studio on a vintage console with analog gear is that things get introduced to the music that you didn't mean to have introduced to the music. You know what I mean?
Good point. Yeah.
If I got 40 channels of Neve, no 2 channels sound identical.
Sure.
In Pro Tools, they all sound exactly the same.
Yeah.
But, so you might get some distortion or something funny coming out of channel 15 on the vocal, but it's appealing.
Yeah.
And it works. And so you get this like extra salt and pepper magic, randomness in your recordings and magic in your recordings that you just don't get in other environments at home on your Apollo or whatever.
Sure.
That's the excitement, but sometimes it goes south and you got to like bring the ship back on and keep the vibe going because, some old piece of equipment decided it didn't want to anymore.
Right.
But that living on the edge thing is something a little bit that I miss from an engineering standpoint.
Yeah. There's always kind of a wild card that might be in play.
Yeah. When we were doing tape and you were, doing a bass overdub, and you needed to pick up the chorus, you couldn't just miss the punch.
Right.
You couldn't come in early because you'd fuck up the shit before it. And
Exactly.
You couldn't get out late because it would be gone. It was gone. With Pro Tools, you don't even need, you could punch in 3 bars late and then just scroll back and put in a little edit or whatever.
Right. Just build a punch playlist. You know what I mean? Like multiple passes.
Yeah, and then you just comp, and it's just so easy, and there's no terror, you know.
Yeah.
I used to, you know, as an assistant, there was a constant sense of terror, particularly right at that moment when the band starts playing their song and they're getting into the you know, the second half of the intro, and you're looking at the tape machine, and you want to make sure that all the instruments are getting to the tape, and the red light is on.
Yeah, right.
You know, and everybody's hearing the same thing in the headphones, and you're looking around and just making sure everything's happening, you know, because it could all fall apart if you just fucked up one thing. And I like that. There's a sense of immediacy to it, and you get more excited about the performance.
Yeah,
because it's happening live. It's like being in a concert, and everybody's playing together, and they're all trying to nail it. And you know, and you can tell this is going to be the one. This is going to be the one.
This is it. This is it. I feel it, guys. This is it.
And then the drummer can't do the 7/8 part.
The man I actually just got. It was today. The artist I was in there recording with just sent out. I think it's a board mix. I don't know if it's the final mix at all. It sounds amazing. As you know, we tracked live for that. But it sounds great. It sounds great. Like everything that happened in that space, tracking live was a lot of fun. And from what I've heard so far, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, I like that. And that, like I said, that happens more with big band ensembles and stuff.
Yeah.
I've noticed that the rock bands or rock recordings, there's less of all the band playing together, you know, or playing together for keeper stuff.
Right.
You know, with the lead singer in a booth, you know, doing his scratch vocal, and then, you know, they're doing scratch guitars. And
they're only going to keep the drum take, but everybody's playing.
Yeah, it's like they're going to keep the drums and maybe the bass.
Yeah.
You know, that's usually how we tracked records back in the day.
Yeah.
You know, you try to get the drums and the bass and then, you know, overdub everything after that, but everybody kind of had to be into it to get that performance from the drums.
Sure.
And the bass.
Sure.
And to think that I think the majority of the stuff that I did, nobody was using a click.
Yeah.
You know, so the songs would naturally speed up. You know, the last chorus was a lot faster. The vamp was a lot faster than the first chorus. And you've only found that out when you were trying to fly in the background vocals into the last chorus, and they're totally lagging to the track, and you're like, oh no shit. We got faster.
Let's move forward. You just released a single titled Heavy that is on Spotify.
That's right.
Let's talk about you as a songwriter. What's your history as a songwriter? When did you start writing songs that you would then release? Because I'm sure that before anybody releases anything, they've been, you know, there's a notebook somewhere full of ideas that never saw the light of day. But how long have you been releasing your own music?
Well, I guess, you know, I started releasing music, of course, when you had to have it on a CD. And honestly, I released a CD, I think it was in 2006, called Rock, Paper, Scissors. The title was, I think, in response to people, you know, I'm all over the map songwriting wise, and people would say, what kind of music do you play? Rock, and paper, scissors. I don't know. Anyway. But you know, the story behind that is that, you know, throughout my engineering career, in spaces between projects, I would go into the studio. That was one of the perks of working in a studio, for example, and going in and being able to record your own stuff.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times I would do all the instrumentation. You know, sometimes maybe a band wanted to record something, and I said, well, if you record some drum tracks for me, then I'll record your music.
Okay.
You know, and so I had to just settle for whatever performance they gave me, because I had to get to their stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
Point being that I was over nearly a 20-year period, I was recording songs in the studio, and I had this problem where each recording was progressively better than the one before it. So I had 3 songs that I thought were worthy, right, that I could probably release, you know, and put on an album. And then I'd record another song, and what was the third song became the 4th song, and it wasn't worthy anymore because the news, you know what I mean? Like the bar kept going up. So anyway, long story short, I was in Florida. There was this kid, he was an intern. at the studio I was working at, and he says, "Why don't you release this stuff? What's wrong with you? Your music's great, you know."
Okay.
And so I said, "Okay." And
what was the kid's name?
Sorry, all of a sudden I forgot his
What's funny is the point I was going to make is this intern kid's kind of a game changer.
Yeah, well, I mean, his name is Travis Hunter Brown. He's actually a great songwriter himself. He's in Nashville now, I think. And he was kind of a fan or whatever. And he said, "Your music's great." And so we decided on, 12 or 13 songs. And so I went about to scrape up some of these old recordings and kind of remaster them or whatever, or get them into Pro Tools so I could sequence the record and I could send it out and have it made into a CD. And I got artwork and all that stuff and spent a good amount of time promoting it. And so that was my first release. And, the further away I get from it, the more I appreciate it. Mm-hmm. When you write something, you don't know why the hell you wrote it. You just get obsessed with, that's how my songwriting process is. Sure. I write something, and it's kind of like that song you hear on the radio that won't get out of your head. Yeah. And I just obsess over it until it's done, until it's mixed. And at that point, I'm done with it. I never thought much about I just want to hand it to somebody else. I'm not interested. Because I'm more interested in creating the music than I am in selling the creative
process, right?
So at that point, people would say, I would play them a song and they're like, "Wow, that's fantastic. What are you going to do with it?" And I'm like, what do you mean? What? I just did it.
It's done. What are you talking about?
It's hard to explain, what that feels like. It's like, what do you mean when I did it? That's me doing it. But anyway, that came out on CD long before there was streaming services and stuff. I think at the time when I released it, there was I did it through CD Baby, and there was Rhapsody. Oh, sure, I remember that. And Rhapsody and the new version of whatever that the one where he used to steal the music. Napster. There was a few streaming services that it was released on. And then in 2000, a little bit later, I released a single called "Larry Started Smoking," which was another random piece that I did. I have like a jam band, friends that I've known since junior high, that we'd go out and we'd play and we'd have fun. And we had a jam one night, and about halfway through, we went outside the rehearsal studio and somebody passed around a bowl. And then we went back in, and in this band, I play bass and I sing. Okay. And so I was either forgetting the lyrics or forgetting the bass part. I don't know whether to make a pot joke or a bass player joke. I don't know where to go with that one. Yeah. So maybe the next day, the guitar player said, "Man, that was a great jam last night." And then the drummer responded, "That was a great jam until Larry started smoking." And so then I just spontaneously wrote a response email that was, he had a great home, a fast car, a private booth at all the bars, hot wife, a penthouse with girls and drugs and bubbly wine, a huge stack, a thoroughbred 92-inch TV set, his grill iced, loaded dice, a pack of lies, and no regrets. And, and so it was just kind of a story about this guy, who was a big pimpin' and he kind of just fucks it all up, I guess. It's metaphorical somehow, but so I got obsessed with that, and that was the first song that I decided to go down to San Diego and work with a friend of mine named Alan Sanderson. And I hired a drummer, hired a bass player, hired a guitar player, hired a sax player, and a bone player. And his wife sang background vocals. So basically all I was doing on that was, if I'm not mistaken, was singing. Yeah, that had to feel good. Just like, and it was fucking awesome. We kind of ran through it kind of halfway. It was a super simple song and poppy and fun, and everybody must listen to it. but it was liberating I sang my vocal after the band had left, and, walked outside and talked to the guy who was in the bay next door in this industrial park while somebody else was comping my vocal. I wasn't engineering. I wasn't playing drums. I wasn't, and it came out better than anything I'd ever done. And I was like, well, duh, I just I paid these guys $100 each, and it was liberating, to let them do their thing. And it came out great. And I ended up, I was doing the couch surfing tour at that time. And I ended up scraping up the cash to make a video for it.
Okay.
I had a friend who was in film school or whatever, and he got all his buddies together, and I spent like $6,500. And now there's a video of that song and that release on YouTube. I'm super proud of that moment. But again, it was just something that had to be done. I was sitting in this lean-to. I was running in Venice Beach and playing this song over and over and over. And it just stuck with me. And I was like, I have to record this. I have to record this. And I went down to San Diego, and the studio was busted, and I had to leave and come back. And I wasn't taking no for an answer. Same thing with the video. I didn't have the bread. Somebody owed me like $6,000, and I was like, fuck it, I'll borrow the money and maybe those guys will pay me. And
it worked that out. Yeah.
And then they did pay me. So proud of that. And then more recently with this song Heavy, that was just really came of the isolation and the weirdness of this whole COVID thing.
Sure.
I kept coming into the studio, even though people weren't coming into the studio.
Yeah.
And I thought, there's a lot of opportunity here to do work on the studio that I couldn't do otherwise, because we don't have sessions, and you can tear shit apart and leave it that way for a few days at a time. But you try to keep it together.
Yeah.
And think, and try to think things are normal when they're just not. And
they weren't at all. No.
And one night it's 1:00 in the morning, and I just played a riff on my guitar. It was like a sequence of 4 chords arpeggiated or something. And I thought it was cool. And I turned my phone on, and there's a 20-minute recording where I just played that riff and a few other things and sang all the words. And then I just went back and put it in record again and used the words that I liked out of that 20 minutes. And it was pretty much written. That's
great.
That's how I write. It just comes out. I don't know what I was singing about.
But you were in it. You were in this stream of consciousness that really.
Yeah, it was cathartic, and cathartic to the point where I walked into the studio one day, and it was just me and Keith, who's the assistant manager here and an exceptional engineer as well. And I said, Keith, we're recording this. And we went into studio one kind of, I just brought in my guitar that day and said, this is going to happen. And so I recorded the acoustic and the vocals. And, after I got to the end of the song on one take, I ended up in the corner of the room sobbing my eyes out. I just kind of lost it. It was necessary to.
That's great, man. I mean, you push yourself there. You push yourself that hard emotionally to get this out. Yeah, you really tapped into some real situations, that were happening.
Yeah, and you don't know where it's coming from or where it's going to go, and certainly the longer it was nice that it was not too long after I wrote the original thing. Mm-hmm. Because when you've written a song and you've performed it a shitload of times, and then you go into to do the record. Yeah. Sometimes it's really hard to tap into the original emotion that came out, and
loses some mojo for sure.
Yeah. And I that's the part I like, is the mojo, the weirdness, those recordings on my phone for me, that's the epitome of that song. To me, it sounds the same without all the production and everything. I hear it in my head, but then I realize that other people can't.
Right.
They're not in my head. They don't imagine all that stuff. So they go, oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
But this one was again a different adventure where I had used Kenny Aronoff to record drums on another track I was working on that I've been working on for like 8 years. I don't know why it's been such a long process with that song.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, hell, I'm going to send this this guitar and vocal to Kenny, and he put drums on it, and of course it was amazing.
Of course.
He does 3 takes at his place, and this was another byproduct, as I was telling you the other day of COVID, was that as opposed to me going, shit, I need to hire Kenny and get Tim Pierce and get these, Greg in here to play bass and get them all together and hire the studio. Instead, I could just send the track out and have somebody send me back an overdub. And it took all the decision making out of the, because I couldn't produce it. I just had to go, yep, that works. And then, I kind of built the track on that. I wanted to put strings on it. And for some reason, I thought of electric violin. Mm-hmm. It just came to me like, that's what I want. I want this like intense Jeff Beck distorted, gut wrenching thing. And, when I was first, I simulated some cellos. I was like, no, I don't want it to be that sappy shit. I want it to be rock. I want it to be aggressive. I want it to be,
have an edge.
To voice the angst, that I'm feeling about this situation. My
it absolutely did, man.
That was, my kid can't go to school. She's stuck in the house. My wife hasn't left the house, and I'm going to work, and I go down, into Hollywood, and there's nobody on the streets. And, it's just, the news is hitting you every day. And I think in the lyric, I'm counting. I don't know why I did that, but the first line is, it took 1, it took 2.
Yeah.
It took everything in you. And I assume it's because every day they're like 638 people have died of COVID. Yeah. 128 million people have, and you're getting these numbers all the time, and somehow their lives, and I think that's where it came from, because just throughout the first and second verse, I'm using these numbers, and I couldn't quite figure out where that came from, but I have to assume it had to do with the body count,
Yeah.
So it's pretty heavy shit.
It is, man. And, it still is. You're like, we're not out of it. To get back to the track, I loved the violin on it. I remember after I heard it, I texted you about that like the violin itself is so reflective of just like this manic hysteria that we were all feeling. But then there's not the lyrics, but just the sound of your voice kind of reflects to like, if you look outside, nobody's on the streets, right? It's super calm. Like you were just saying, you go to Hollywood, no one's there. It doesn't feel like Hollywood at all. It's super bizarre because everything is calm. And there was a quality in your voice that kind of reflected that to me. But then meanwhile, there's this just hysterical electric violin thing happening that's all over the place, but that's how we're all feeling inside about this calm thing. There's a kind of two simultaneous worlds happening. Everything's calm outside and no one's out there. That's so bizarre that we're all freaking out. I think that song specifically did a great job at capturing all that.
Yeah, I guess so. And I'm just glad that the muse stopped by to say hi.
Yeah.
and I was, allowed to kind of get it out when I got it out, and I was able to, have a vision, everything kind of came one piece at a time. Like, this is how I envision it. I reached out to Lily Hayden. I don't know if you know who that is.
I don't.
She's a violinist,
okay,
and a great artist. And, she was too busy she does electric violin. And I honestly wasn't that familiar with her stuff, but her name popped into my head as, oh, she plays electric violin.
Right. She
was busy scoring a television show. And I ended up, as you know, I literally Googled Mahavishnu Orchestra.
Yeah.
Because I remember they had Jean-Luc Ponty and they had electric violin.
Sure.
And I said, who's the violinist in Mahavishnu Orchestra? And it was Jerry Goodman was the original violinist.
Okay.
So, it's amazing what I can do now as opposed to when I first entered the music business and I was a songwriter. You had to go into a studio with 24 track analog machines and a big recording console. Now I can Google somebody's name. He played in a band in the 70s, find his website, which has like an AOL.com email address, emailed him and said, hey, I got this track. You want to play on it? He says, sure, send me the track. I sent him the acoustic version. He said, well, I'm thinking acoustic violin. I said, no, I want, electric violin, and I'm going to have electric guitars and all this shit. And he says, well, then go record the electric guitars and send me that.
Okay.
And, and then he sent it back and I almost died.
Yeah.
It was a little embarrassing because there was a couple of spots where I'm like, that little spot right there. I don't like that, what you did there. If you could do that again. And he seemed a little like faux offended, like really, but he's 70.
Wow.
And he's in Eugene, Oregon, and he was working on Performer or something like that. And it was just amazing the way that came together.
It was a great performance by him, and it was a great production decision, I think, to have the electric violin with that concept, with that Jeff Beck concept kind of in mind. I thought that was something that really put the tune into another place that it needed to go.
Yeah, I mean, when the solo comes in, it still gives me chills because there's this little bit of a pause, and then all of a sudden this thing comes storming in. And I didn't give him any direction, Okay. And I think that's, the part where I said, this is producing. This is. I'm no longer a DIY songwriter guy.
Yeah,
I am a producer because I chose the dude and I let him do his thing.
Yeah.
And again, it was easier to let him do his thing because I wasn't there.
Yeah, exactly.
He just sent me the tracks back. Had I been in the studio with him, I might have just killed his whole vibe. Like, what are you doing? I don't like that. Oh, that part in the second part, I don't like that. You know what I mean? And he would have tried to, how that happens when you try to direct somebody and it totally takes all the fun out.
Yeah, I think the micromanaging thing can definitely choke a lot of someone's natural creativity.
So producing is knowing when to lean in and when to step back and let somebody do their thing. And that's just one aspect of that. But, it was fun doing the guitars, the hard rock guitars and stuff. And then I farmed it out to somebody to mix it. Okay. I could have mixed it.
Sure.
I know how to mix.
Yeah.
But I was like, So I sent it over to Mark Needham.
Okay.
He's a brilliant producer engineer, and really he's a friend of mine. I like him as a person. I wasn't even familiar with his body of work, which is actually quite extensive, and he's done some amazing records, but I only really looked that up after he mixed the song,
Amazing.
Well, I just like him. He's a cool guy and I trust him, and he's rock and roll. That's
the thing, man. When you trust somebody's intuition, that's almost the biggest compliment you can do, give and receive in this business, is to have your intuition trusted, Yeah,
he's a real dude. And it's just like, I'm going to release a track hopefully soon that I worked with a fellow named Tim Davis on. And again, I didn't really know his resume. I just see him around the studio. And this is where I'm really, really fortunate. And I'm glad that I'm finally exploiting the fact that I'm working around some of the most talented people in the music universe.
Absolutely.
I happen to be in Hollywood in the best studio in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And it just so happens that the people that come through here are the best of the best. But I meet them at the coffee machine and we talk about the rain or the parking or their kids. I don't know their body of work. I just know you're a really cool person and you're honest with me and I trust you. Would you like to work on my music?
Yeah.
And so Mark did a great job mixing it. At first I was like, that's not what I would have done.
Yeah.
And so I did that whole thing where I was like, well, could you do this? And he sent me what I asked for. And then I lived with it for about a day and a half. And I said, yeah, what you did in the first place.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah, you were right.
Right.
My bad.
Yeah, it happens. But I'm super proud of the track. I'm glad we're talking about it to this level, because for me, there's so much that goes into it.
Yeah.
As far as my thought process and the ups, the ups and the downs, waiting for the violinist that doesn't show up and saying, you know what, I don't rate. No, fuck it. I'm going to find somebody else to do it.
Right.
And, I'm going to go into the studio. Oh, I can't, somebody else booked, or, you know what I mean? Like there's all these little pieces that you have to push through to get something done.
It's a lot of work, man. It's a lot of work. I mean, not only to create the material, but scheduling guys, calling guys, waiting for someone to call you back, seeing if they'll do it for the budget you have, all the way down the list, like everything. There's a lot of work and a ton of decisions that go in, like I think I was telling you when I was at the studio, I just finished my debut record at the end of September. And so I can empathize and understand exactly how much effort goes into producing a final product of music.
Congratulations. I mean, one thing you mentioned budget, and one thing that I stuck to was somebody would say, this is how much it would cost for me to do this. And I'd go, okay. I just wasn't in the mood to, I don't like it when people, nobody does that with me. If I say, hey, my rate, this is my rate.
Yeah.
And somebody says, can you do it for less? It's just awkward. And
yeah, I think that there's,
I want to get the best out of these guys.
Absolutely.
And I don't want them to think, oh, well, you're not a signed artist, so I'm going to give you a deal and phone it in or whatever. I want the same thing that everybody else gets. And so I just paid people what they wanted to get paid.
Yeah. That's great.
And obviously, thank God for credit.
I worked out. I mean, for my thing, I worked out a budget that was, I thought if I got called for that, I'd be into it. So then I just approached the guys like, yo, how's this rate work for you? I think this is absolutely, cool, for a day rate. And everybody was comfortable with it, and showed up and delivered. And
did you have a budget that was yours, or?
Yeah, it was a private budget. That was all out of pocket.
Oh yeah. Well, good for you.
But I didn't want to do a crowdfunding thing. I don't think that my friends should have to pay for my interests. If that being said, I'd rather have them I'll chip in for a car payment every month, so I could have a Tesla. if I'm poaching my friends for money, let's do something else besides a record.
Yeah, I thought about it too. I could do that. But, at the time I was doing okay. I still had pre-COVID, side hustle money.
Okay.
So I was able to pay cash, out of my bank account.
Sure.
But at the end of it, and, this is probably a different discussion. I said, I want to do this more.
Yeah. There's something about it, man. Like right after I got done tracking, I'm like, I want to do another record. You're all pumped up on the process and kind of amped up when something gets completed. Like, I just want to do another one. Let's do it.
Yeah. Well, and this goes back to what I was saying about, I write the song, I get obsessed about it, I record it, and then I move on. And really, not to get too much into, my own life direction and stuff, but I don't, not to, again, tell the universe or whatever, but honestly, I just want to make enough bread off of this track so that I can do another one.
Yeah. Just have it be self-sustaining. Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to make these records. I got a bunch of songs that now that I've seen, how to produce like a pro, quote unquote, that I want to record the right way, and I want to pay the musicians, and I want to produce the records, and it just takes bread, I mean, I'm realizing that it also takes, some 30 years of producing records and engineering records.
There's that. Yeah.
I mean, it's like, yeah, there's some talent there on my part, but it was so fun to sit down doing the bass parts, being a bass player myself, and hiring somebody else to do the bass.
Sure.
And there's just having recorded so many bands over the years and gone through the process so many times, to naturally fall into a place where, he plays a take, and I immediately know that you're way too on top, bro.
Right.
So I go, okay, now take a Quaalude and let's do that again. And then he plays it again, and it's pretty spot on. and then you stop and you talk about the weather.
Yeah.
It's like having a Coke and then eating a cracker and having a Pepsi,
Right.
and all these things kind of come naturally. We talk about something else. We talk about the kids. Okay, let's look at the song again.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to just sit there pounding at it.
Yeah.
And picking
beat a dead
at
horse. Yeah.
So you kind of get away from it and come back to it, because now he's kind of got the muscle memory to know what we're going for or whatever.
Yeah.
That's the part of production I like. And like I said, I think that it feels good because I know that it comes from years and years and years of experience in doing that, and sitting in a room and knowing, when to tell the engineer that sound sucks.
Yeah.
That guitar tone is not happening for me. And I know enough. And this is going back to, you said, my path. When I came into the studio in the first place, I wanted to be able to produce my own music.
Oh, mission accomplished.
I wanted to know how it all worked. And, X amount of years later, if the bass tone or the guitar tone isn't happening, I have the ability to walk out into the room and look at where the mic is and move it to where I think it should be to get the tone that I want if I need to. Yeah. I can tell the engineer that's too much compression, or, do you know what I mean? But I don't have to. If I like it, I can just shut up.
There you go.
But I know how the recording part works. I know how the gain structure works, all that stuff. But knowing it actually makes me be able to release it.
Yeah.
And let somebody else take care of it.
Yeah.
But I can always fix it if it's wrong. It was nice to feel all those things coming together and produce a bass track.
Yeah.
And at the end, it sounded like me playing bass.
Yeah.
That's how I would have done it if I was a really good bass player.
Man, thanks for taking the time. When you do another single, let me know. Let's have you back on, and I want to hear that, and we'll talk more about that one. This one's heavy. The song title is heavy, and it is heavy. It's on Spotify. It's on other streaming platforms, I'm assuming, or mainly Spotify, Apple Music.
Pretty much any streaming platform you can think of. CD Babies send it to everybody.
Okay.
And it's heavy. And the name is Lawrence Ethan. And of course, there's a lawrenceethan.com and Lawrence Ethan Music on Facebook and Instagram. Cool. And I will be coming out with, I'm hoping, beginning of December, I will be, or end of November, I'm going to release another single, which is a totally different kind of song than this one was.
Fantastic.
But I have it in the queue. There's a song I'm waiting to have mixed that I was hoping to release in December, but I decided I would go with this one. And,
okay.
So I'm gonna keep Ivy dripping the music into the universe.
Yeah, good, man. Keep me updated. We'll get you back on to talk about it.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. All right, Lawrence. We'll talk to you soon, man.
All right, love you. Bye.
All right, thanks. Bye. Enjoy the show, please subscribe to the Bass Shed podcast. You can also find me at facebook.com/The Bass Shed, on Instagram at The Bass Shed, on Twitter at Bass Shed. I'm all those places and try to stay regularly active. Loved having Lawrence on the show. Loved hearing about his process to get the song together, the song titled Heavy. I'm interested to hear what he has, in the queue. I'm interested to hear the next one that he releases, and I'm interested to talk to him about his process on the newest song, the latest song that's in the works. I definitely loved listening to the process about how the song Heavy came to be. Definitely check it out. You can get there, get to a Spotify page by going to thebassshed.com/podcast/Lawrence Ethan. I have a link there. Listen to the song. Let me know what you think about it. Shoot me an email at ryan@thebassshed.com. I should probably get my email right, huh? ryan@thebassshed.com. Shoot me an email. Let me know what you're thinking about Lawrence's tune. I'd be interested to hear how you guys and ladies respond. How you guys respond to the music. What you think about it. It's about the pandemic. So there's a lot there. A lot of people have a lot of emotions about all that. It's become quite divisive. So that's about all. I feel like I'm just rambling now. I'm going to stop rambling. That's all I got, folks. That's all I got. I will catch you on the next one in a minute.